Override evacuation immediately. Commander Zillax's primary manipulators slammed the emergency console, canceling the station-wide alert 3 seconds before forced atmospheric purge. Do not approach Sector 7. Security Chief Kael'thas's voice crackled through comms, pitched higher than Zillax had heard in 15 cycles. Sir, the Krixathi cubs, all 9 of them, they're in the humans' library. They've been breaching containment for 6 days straight. We've lost 2 security teams trying to extract her and... And what, Chief? Zillax felt his respiratory system constrict. 9 Krixathi cubs, the galaxy's apex predators. Juveniles with 73 documented kills between them just this lunar cycle. Is the human dead? No, sir. She's reading to them. The words made no sense. Zillax pulled up the security feed, and his translator implant briefly convinced him it was malfunctioning. Human librarian Sarah Jackson sat cross-legged on the floor, a datapad in her lap, completely surrounded by creatures that had eviscerated a Thorganian war mech last week. Around her lay scattered objects that made Zillax's blood chill. 3 live plasma charges, a Venusian death blossom, fatally toxic to most species, classified weapon components, someone's entire prosthetic arm, and what appeared to be a leaking container of antimatter coolant. The cubs brought her those? Zillax whispered. Affirmative, sir. We've been monitoring. They breach containment, grab random objects, some extremely dangerous, and bring them to her. Then they sit and watch her examine the items. She talks about each one, and they just listen. One cub, massive even for a juvenile, its crystalline fur reflecting the library's light in patterns that usually preceded an attack, nudged the plasma charge closer to Sarah with its snout. She looked up from her reading. Oh, thank you, sweetie. Is this for today's lesson? Her voice carried that particular human tone Zillax had learned to recognize, the one they used with their own young. Let's see. Okay, class, this is a plasma charge. Very dangerous. We don't play with these, but we can study how the magnetic containment field works. The cubs leaned in, their attention absolute. Sir? Kael'thas continued. We've tried everything. Tranquilizers bounce off their hide. Sonic deterrents make them aggressive. When we attempted to grab the human 2 hours ago, all 9 cubs formed a defensive perimeter. One of them looked directly at the security team and, I'm reading from the report, vocalized in a pattern suggesting territorial protection of valued resources. They think she's theirs, Zillax said slowly. The xenobiologist believes they've imprinted. Sir, if we evacuate her now, if we try to force separation. Kael'thas didn't finish. He didn't need to. 9 enraged Krixathi cubs would tear through the station's hull like paper. They'd killed for less. Zillax watched as Sarah held up the Venusian death blossom, completely unconcerned by the fact that its spores could liquefy her internal organs in under 90 seconds. Now this is interesting. See these purple petals? This plant is poisonous, which means we look but don't touch. Just like we talked about with boundaries, remember? The cubs made a sound, a low, resonant purr that typically preceded a feeding frenzy. But they didn't move. They just watched. Their 6 eyes focused on Sarah with an intensity that should have been directed at prey. How long has this been happening? Zillax demanded. 6 days of observed behavior, but we think it started 2 weeks ago. Small items at first, a spare coupling, a data chip, a meal tray. Then they escalated. Yesterday, one brought her a functioning miniature fusion reactor. She taught them about energy conservation. She what? Showed them pictures of renewable energy. They purred, sir, for 45 minutes. Zilax pulled up the broader security logs. Scifi containment breaches, 17 in the past 2 weeks. Station casualties, 0. That was impossible. Scifi cubs breached containment an average of twice per cycle, with an 87% casualty rate. The cubs aren't hunting anymore, he realized. They're studying. That's the human's word for it, yes, sir. She calls them her students. She's named them. There's Spike, Princess, Professor. She named them. Sir, I cannot stress this enough. Those cubs respond to those names. Princess brought her a severed power conduit yesterday. The human said, Princess, we talked about bringing safe things, remember? And the cub, I watched this personally, the cub went back and brought her a book instead. On screen, Sarah was now demonstrating something with a prosthetic arm, moving its fingers one at a time. See? Mechanical joints. Just like we have bones and muscles, this arm has servos and actuators. Engineering is just another way of studying how things work. The cubs were mesmerized. Get xenobiologist Azila up here, Zilax ordered, unable to look away from the impossible scene. And someone find out what else these cubs have been stealing. If they're bringing her classified weapons as show and tell, we have a security crisis that makes the evacuation look minor. Already on it, sir. You're not going to believe what we found in the library storage closet. Zilax was beginning to suspect he'd believe anything at this point. A galaxy's most efficient killers were attending Storytime, and the human thought it was Tuesday. Xenobiologist Azila arrived within the hour, her facial tendrils quivering with scientific skepticism. That skepticism died the moment she saw the library's storage closet. That's a live thermal detonator, she said, her voice remarkably steady, next to a canister of biological agent TX7. Next to, is that the captain's ceremonial blade? The one that went missing 3 days ago? The cubs are collectors, Kael'thas explained, his tone suggesting he'd given up on sanity entirely. They bring her things they think are interesting. She studies each one with them, explains what it does, then stores it safely. He gestured at the closet that now served as the galaxy's most dangerous lost and found. Yesterday, one brought her a live grenade with the pin already pulled. Azila's tendrils went rigid. And? She calmly placed it in a containment field, explained how chemical reactions create explosive force, then taught them about safe distance protocols. They sat there purring for 20 minutes while she drew diagrams. On the security feed, Sarah was currently examining what appeared to be somebody's entire lunch. Brought to her by a cub Kael'thas had learned was called Buttons. The cub had apparently stolen it directly from the mess hall, tray and all. Excellent sharing, Buttons. But remember, we don't take food from others without asking. That's called stealing, and it makes people sad. Let's talk about why asking permission is important. Sarah's voice carried that eternal human patience that Azila was beginning to suspect might be a form of psychological warfare. There are now 12 cubs attending daily, Kael'thas continued. Word spread through the Scifi containment sectors. They're teaching each other how to breach security specifically to attend library time. 12, Azila repeated. 12 Scifi cubs, the species with 127 documented kills on this station alone. The species we have standing orders to terminate on site are sitting in circle time. Learning about photosynthesis, Kael'thas confirmed. She used a plant from the hydroponics bay. 3 cubs actually brought her more plants the next day to study together. They're retaining information and applying it contextually. Azila accessed her data terminal with trembling manipulators. That's impossible. Kriksathi cubs have survival instincts and hunting behaviors. They don't have learning frameworks for abstract concepts. They shouldn't even understand symbolic representation until full maturity, and that's another 8 cycles of development. Watch this. Kael'thas pulled up footage from yesterday. Sarah held up 2 objects, a data pad and a book. Okay, friends, what's the same about these 2 things? A cub designated Professor had made a complex vocalization. Yes, exactly. They both have information. One is digital and one is paper. But both teach us things. You're so smart, Professor. The cub's purr had rattled the deck plating. She's using positive reinforcement, Azila whispered. Immediate reward for correct responses. Building neural pathways through encouragement and repetition. These are human child-rearing techniques. That shouldn't work on apex predators. It shouldn't work on anything except human juveniles. Their young are unusually helpless for an unusually long time. Humans evolved extensive patience and teaching behaviors just to keep their offspring alive. But Kriksathi cubs are born lethal. They don't need teaching, they need containment. On screen, a new cub arrived, dragging something that made both observers flinch, a plasma cutter, still active, scoring marks into the deck. Oh my goodness, that's dangerous, sweetie. Sarah stood up, moving toward the cub with zero hesitation. The other 11 cubs immediately shifted, forming a protective circle around her. The new arrival dropped the plasma cutter and lowered its head. It's okay, you didn't know. Let's turn this off safely together, and then I'll teach you what it's for. Can you help me? Gently now. Sarah guided the cub's foreclaw to the deactivation switch. There we go. Perfect. See, when we work together, we can handle even scary things safely. The new cub's purr shook the camera feed. She just made it deactivate its own weapon, Azila said, by asking nicely. She calls it building trust and confidence, Kael'thas replied. I called it terrifying. Both can be true. Azila watched as Sarah welcomed the new cub, now dubbed Sparky, into the circle, the other cubs making room without aggression. Commander Zelax needs to see this, and we need to contact the Galactic Council. The Council? Why? Because if human educational methods can domesticate Kriksathi cubs. Azila's tendrils trembled. Chief, humans didn't just survive their apex predators. They turned their own children, born weak, helpless, and demanding, into the galaxy's most successful species. These teaching instincts evolved to handle Earth's most dangerous predator, which was human juveniles. Azila turned from the screen. And if those same instincts work on actual apex predators, we're not observing library time, Chief. We're observing weaponized culture. On screen, Sarah was reading a book about friendship to 12 attentive killing machines, and every single one was learning. The crisis escalated on day 19 when a cub designated Patches brought Sarah a wounded station rat, still alive and bleeding. Oh no, sweetie, did you catch this? Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. The rat squeaked in terror. Patches made a questioning sound, nudging the injured creature toward her. I see. You want me to study it? Sarah carefully picked up the rat, and every observer watching the security feed held their breath. Okay, but look, it's hurt. See? It's scared and in pain. Let's talk about being gentle with living things. Kael'thas burst into Commander Zilax's office. Sir, she's teaching them mercy. She's what? Within 20 minutes, Sarah had 12 apex predators watching intently as she demonstrated basic first aid on a station rat, explaining concepts like suffering and kindness and ecosystem balance. She bandaged the rat's leg, placed it in a small habitat, and gave it food. See? Every creature has a purpose. This little friend keeps the station clean by eating waste. If we hurt the rats, or trash builds up and everyone suffers. Everything's connected. The cubs purred. Not the attack purr. Something different. Softer. They're understanding. Azila breathed, reviewing her neural scans. They're actually processing empathy. By day 23, cubs were bringing injured creatures specifically for healing. Small repairs, cautious handling. One cub brought a broken maintenance drone and watched Sarah explain how to fix it without breaking it further. Then the adult Krikzathi noticed. "Commander," Kylthas reported, his voice tight. "We have adult Krikzathi at the library entrance. 3 of them. They're confused. Their cubs won't engage in hunting behaviors. One adult tried to initiate a kill training exercise, and the cub brought the prey to Sarah instead." The Galactic Council's emergency transmission arrived simultaneously. Station 7 Alpha, explain immediately why Krikzathi juvenile aggression rates have dropped 94% and why we're receiving reports of predators attending classes. Zilax had no explanation that wouldn't sound insane. Azila's research made it worse. "Commander, the cubs' cognitive development has tripled. They're learning from each other, teaching what Sarah taught them. Their social structure is shifting from competitive hierarchy to cooperative groups. This shouldn't be possible in 9 weeks." What changed? She did. Azila pulled up footage of Sarah reading a colorful book titled Rainbow Fish to an audience of killing machines. Watch. Rainbow Fish had beautiful scales, but he wouldn't share them. So none of the other fish wanted to be his friend. He was lonely, but when he learned to share, everyone was happy, including him. What do you think the lesson is? A cub, princess, vocalized something complex. Yes, exactly. Sharing makes everyone happier, including us. You're so smart, princess. The purring rattled equipment 3 rooms away. She's teaching them abstract social concepts, Azila said quietly. Sharing, friendship, empathy, and their understanding. Commander, these are the concepts that allowed humans to build civilization. They're teaching them to apex predators. This is insane. Storytime is now the station's most important event. Personnel have started scheduling around it. 3 ambassadors asked to observe. Sir, we're not watching education anymore. We're watching cultural transmission. Humans spent millions of years teaching cooperation to their own predators, their children. Those same techniques work on actual predators. On screen, Sarah laughed. That peculiar human sound that somehow conveyed joy and exasperation simultaneously. Okay, friends, I know you loved Rainbow Fish. Next week, we're starting chapter books. Maybe Charlotte's Web. It's about a spider and a pig who become best friends. The cub's enthusiasm was visible even through the camera. A spider and a pig, Kylthas repeated. She's going to teach them that natural enemies can be friends. Chief, Zilax said slowly, get me every human education specialist within 10 systems. And someone asked Sarah Jackson if she understands what she's doing. When they asked, Sarah looked genuinely confused. They're just curious. Predators are smart. They need enrichment. Haven't you ever had a puppy? No one knew what a puppy was, which somehow made everything worse. The cubs brought her a quantum physics textbook that afternoon. Sarah beamed. Ooh, advanced topics. Okay, class, let's talk about really tiny things. Azila's final report to the council had 1 sentence. Human childhood education is a weaponizable culture, and they don't even know it. Retry Commander Zillax found the answer in Earth's historical database at 0300 hours, and it made terrible, perfect sense. They're apex predators, he said aloud to his empty office. Human children, born helpless, demanding constant attention, requiring years of intensive care. Humans didn't just survive alongside apex predators, they evolved to raise them. Every human parenting instinct, the patience, the consistent boundaries, the positive reinforcement, that particular tone of voice that carried absolute authority without aggression, had been honed over millions of years to manage creatures that were simultaneously vulnerable and dangerous. Their own offspring. Sarah's teacher voice worked on Crixathi cubs because it was designed to work on something just as unpredictable and potentially lethal: human toddlers. The revelation came just in time. 3 adult Crixathi arrived at the library entrance on day 32, summoned by station authorities in a desperate attempt at communication. Security teams positioned themselves at every corridor, expecting carnage. Instead, they witnessed something unprecedented. "Mama! Papa!" A cub called Buttons bounded toward the adults, then stopped, looked back at Sarah, and returned to the circle. "Sorry, Miss Sarah, I forgot." Inside voices and walking feet in the library. The adult Crixathi stood frozen, their sensor arrays focused on cubs who were taking turns, sharing data pads, discussing something in low, controlled vocalizations. "Welcome." Sarah stood, smiling with that fearless human warmth. "You must be so proud. Your cubs have learned so much." "Buttons, Professor. Do you want to show your parents what we've been studying?" The cubs eagerly displayed their collection, properly stored now, organized by category. One cub explained the concept of magnetic containment fields. Another demonstrated basic first aid on a willing maintenance drone. A third actually used the phrase ecosystem balance. The adult Crixathi's confusion was palpable. "They're thinking," one adult vocalized through the translator. "Complex, beyond cycles." "They're brilliant," Sarah corrected gently. They just needed someone to encourage that brilliance, like all children do. She'd said children, not cubs. Children. The adults looked at their offspring. Still lethal, still apex predators, but now something more. Enhanced, cognitively accelerated beyond natural development. "You teach more?" an adult asked hesitantly. "Of course. Learning never stops. We're starting literature next week, and I thought maybe some mathematics? Geometry is really interesting once you understand it." The adults exchanged glances through whatever communication method their species used. Then, slowly, they settled onto the library floor. "We listen?" Sarah's face lit up. "Absolutely. The more the merrier." "Okay, everyone, let's review what we learned about cooperation." Kael'thas watched from the security station, his manipulators shaking. They just... First peaceful Crixathi adult station interaction in recorded history, Azila confirmed, her voice awed. Mediated by a human librarian using picture books and positive reinforcement. Commander Zillax's updated protocols went out within the hour. Effective immediately, human education specialists to be assigned to all predator species integration programs. Request immediate deployment of additional human personnel trained in childhood development. The galactic military's request arrived minutes later. Requesting human teachers for special forces, cognitive enhancement training. Previous methods ineffective. Human techniques show 300% improvement in tactical thinking and cooperation. Azila's official report to the council was brief. Humans domesticated themselves by learning to raise their own apex predators. These instincts transfer to actual predators with alarming effectiveness. Recommend immediate establishment of human educational integration protocols across all member species. Humans can apparently domesticate anything, and they think it's normal. Station 7 Alpha became the model for human-predator integration, studied by 40 star systems within the month. And in the library, Sarah Jackson taught Shakespeare to an audience of apex predators who purred contentedly at "to be" or "not to be," while their parents took careful notes. 3 months later, Station 7 Alpha's library hosted 47 predator cubs from 6 different species during daily enrichment programs. The security teams had stopped filing incident reports. There were no incidents. Sarah Jackson, officially promoted to Interspecies Juvenile Development Specialist, but still introducing herself as just the librarian, reviewed a stack of picture books while her students, impossible to call them anything else now, arranged themselves in a semicircle. The older Crixathi cubs helped younger ones find comfortable spots, demonstrating the sharing behaviors that had xenobiologists rewriting textbooks. Ms. Sarah, a cub called Scholar, a newer student, only 6 weeks in the program, approached with something clutched carefully in its foreclaw. "I brought for you." It was a flower, a single delicate bloom from the station's hydroponics bay, presented with awkward gentleness. The observation deck went silent. Azila's tendrils quivered as she documented the moment. "First recorded Crixathi appreciation gesture in history," she whispered into her recording device. "Voluntary gift-giving with no practical survival purpose. Pure symbolic communication of affection." Sarah accepted the flower with a brilliant smile. "Oh, Scholar, this is beautiful. Thank you so much. You know what? Let's add this to our botany lesson today. Everyone, come see what Scholar brought." The cubs crowded around, interested not in the flower as prey or threat, but as a subject of study, because that's what Miss Sarah would want them to think about. "Okay, friends," Sarah said, settling into her reading corner. "Today's advanced group starts algebra. Yes, I see you all excited, Professor in Buttons. And our new students are going to work on vowel sounds. Remember, older students, you can help the younger ones if they get stuck. What do we call that?" "Mentoring," several cubs vocalized in unison. "Exactly. You're all such good teachers yourselves now." In the observation deck, Commander Zilax reviewed the Council's latest transmission. Human educational integration protocols established across all member species, requesting immediate deployment of 200 human teachers for juvenile development programs. 14 species have formally requested human educators for difficult juveniles. Your station's model is being replicated in 40 systems. "Predators learning mathematics," Kael'thas muttered, watching Professor work through a simple equation on a datapad. "Why does that terrify me more than when they were just killing things?" "Because now they're thinking," Azila replied. "Humans survived by teaching cooperation to their own apex predators, their children. They weaponized patience and turned it into civilization, and now they're sharing it." An alarm chimed. New arrivals docking at Bay 7. Kael'thas checked the manifest and felt his respiratory system seize. "Commander, we have Thaxian cubs incoming, unscheduled. Thaxians are more aggressive than Crixathi. Protocol says." "I know what protocol says." Zilax watched the security feed as 3 Thaxian cubs, spines extended, claws out, stalked into the station corridor. Personnel scattered, blast doors sealed, Emergency alerts pinged across every console, except in the library. Sarah looked up from her book, completely unconcerned. "Oh, good. I just got the new Dr. Seuss translation delivered yesterday." She laughed, that human sound that somehow made impossible things seem manageable. "Hope they like green eggs and ham." The Crixathi cubs were already shifting, making space in the reading circle. "Commander," Kael'thas said slowly, "should we evacuate?" Zilax watched as the Thaxian cubs approached the library entrance, radiating aggression. The Crixathi cubs looked up, interested but not alarmed. Sarah simply smiled and held up a colorful book. "Chief," Zilax said, "finally, would you want to be the one to tell her she can't have story time?" Kael'thas thought about 12 weeks of documentation. Cubs bringing gifts instead of corpses. Predators purring over picture books. Adult Crixathi attending parent-teacher conferences. A human librarian casually dismantling millions of years of predatory evolution with patience and positive reinforcement. "Fair point, sir." They watched as Sarah greeted the Thaxian cubs with that fearless warmth. "Welcome, friends. I'm Miss Sarah. These are my other students. They're excited to meet you. We're just starting a new book. It's about trying new things even when we're not sure about them. Have you heard of green eggs and ham?" The Thaxian cubs, bred for aggression and trained for combat, stopped, stared. One tentatively moved closer. Sarah began to read, her voice carrying that particular human rhythm that turned words into music. "I am Sam. Sam I am. Do you like green eggs and ham?" The cubs, all of them, Crixathi and Thaxian together, leaned in to listen. "She's teaching them rhyming," Azila said faintly. "Predators are learning poetry." "Add it to the report," Zilax replied, already knowing the council would need another updated protocol. Humans can domesticate anything, and they think it's Tuesday. In the library, Sarah turned the page, and the galaxy's most dangerous juveniles purred in harmony. Learning that different could be delightful and trying new things was an adventure. The station's maintenance logs would later note, "No incidents. Storytime ran 15 minutes over. Cubs requested encore reading." It was the most terrifying piece the galaxy had ever known.